some other, I don't know if you're familiar with Digo.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, you download it to your browser. It's a toolbar, and you can store websites, kind of like you're talking about. You can share it.
Yes.
So I'm trying to get the concept. So is the Learning Registry, is it a website you go to, or I have this toolbar, and then do I get to create my own database?
That's right. So it works in a combination of those two things. So there's not a particular website, but as users are interacting, so let's take two examples. CPOMS in Florida is active and live on Learning Registry. Brokers of Expertise is active and live on Learning Registry. So a teacher in CPOM's website, they're on the CPOM's Florida website, and they're interacting with resources. And one of the things they do is they make an observation. I like this resource. CPOMS knows, and the teacher has agreed to share at that level. I know you're a 9th, 5th grade science teacher. So that's what I know that much about you, and you're willing to share that. So what you can do is package up a statement, like Digo style, except this is what's called a federated network. So there's no Digo in the middle. This is just a community of people talking like email. There's a statement that gets generated which says, a 9th grade science teacher believes this is a good resource. Something like that. It's just a statement, but it's machine readable, so it's framed up in a way that a machine could make sense of. And that gets put into the Learning Registry network, which flows around, and California might say, we trust teacher comments that come from Florida's CPOMS product. So then that comes back off the Learning Registry network and gets loaded into Brokers of Expertise, such that when a 9th grade science teacher is searching for a resource, it might say, hey, you might want to try this, because other teachers like you like this. So the way that Amazon does this is quite sophisticated, but it's ultimately down this road, which is we know something about you, we know something about a lot of other people. Why don't we tell you things that other people that are similar to you, rather than the random public connect you with those resources? So that's basically the approach. But Digo is a very good example of what we're trying to do in the educational context. The crucial thing is we don't want to bring it only to the browser. There are all these websites.
That's why I was trying to understand that.
Yeah. Does that clarify?
Yeah.
You said earlier you're going to talk about quality. I get the concept.
Yes.
She likes it, I like it. Maybe it's not very appropriate. How do you get to the quality?
Right.
All these.
So I will preface this by saying there's a staircase that leads us what I would call the castle on the hill, which is detecting effectiveness at the individual level or close to it, so that I'm one kind of learner or I'm one kind of teacher, and this is going to work for me, but it's not going to work down the hall, right? We'd like to get there where different people can detect when it's going to be appropriate and in what context. So that's what I would call mass customization of learning resources. But there's a set of things that we need to do to get there that discriminate effective from ineffective, aligned from not aligned, highly useful from not useful, whatever it might be. One of the early stages in that, I believe, is working on Common Core. So just saying what is connected to the Common Core or another set of standards and what isn't, and in what way. So this is useful for assessing a thing. This is useful for teaching directly. This is useful for homework assignments. There are many different kinds of ways we might connect to the Common Core. So my pitch to you today is that's the first step that we should take towards getting to this. So I want to address your question, but I don't want to do so with a hand-waving sort of selling vaporware. This is going to work today. This is not going to work today. That will work today. We're doing that today, and I would love to engage with California intentionally on doing this. And I'll be clear, this is an open, free project. The federal government has funded it up to now, and there's no profit incentive. In fact, I've specifically designed the technology such that there won't be a profit incentive in the middle. This is designed to be open and free, and no one can get in the way of two parties who want to share. So that said, let's talk about this question of quality. So quality, up until the point that you get to sort of randomized control trials, RCTs, and that sort of thing, quality is an opinion, right, roughly speaking. Argument there, and even when you get there, RCT shaves off the edges of the curve, right? They say, for the middle 40%, we detected this amount of movement for this thing, right? And so you know it's effective, but you're not sure for who or why. You know that for the mass, it had some impact. So sometimes what we're interested in is what's working around the edges, what's working for the individual, and that kind of quality is very hard to study in the traditional sort of academic research framework. So These are controversial things I'm saying. But I'm just going to put them out there to see where you guys want to fall in these in dialogue, ultimately. So I'll give you an example. Hewlett Foundation has funded the creation of a lot of resources, $100 million of free resources over the last 10 years. Great work. Glad they're doing it. They started attaching Google Web Beacons, Google Analytics to their resources, and that allows them to track when and how they're being, or when they're being used, not how. And what they found is they got a popularity contest, which is we funded a bunch of resources, these were used a lot, and these were used a little. That's not good enough, right? Because all that tells us is potentially we shouldn't have funded the ones that got used a lot, because probably they're already being developed by the publishers, and so there's already sufficient resources out there in the field for those. But these ones that were used a little, were they used a little because they're not any good, or were they used a little because they're highly effective for a small population of people? Right? That's a hard question, and that's something that RCT has, unless you've got infinite money, has a hard time unpacking. So what I'm interested in is the road to quality. I'd love to get to the randomized studies and trials, but what I'm interested in is how do we pick apart these opportunities that suggest quality without actually knowing for certain. And there's a lot that publishers do behind the curtain that suggests quality that doesn't actually establish it. They don't RCT all of the textbooks in this way. So we should be clear. I should be clear that that's my opinion. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a student that works with highly migrant kids in 4th grade who deploys not just a resource, but a set of resources in a sequence. And we can detect that because they're doing it in a digital learning environment. And then we look across the country and we say, hey, this is turning up for migrant kids between 3 and 5th grade all the time. But it doesn't seem to show up many other places. Why is that? Is it highly relevant? Is it good for lower English sort of proficiency skills? There may be any number of reasons. But now we're starting to say, for a particular group, there's people out there who found this to be effective. Now, they may be wrong, which is always the worry. They may be wrong, right? And so the ditto machine, I think, is the correct fear here, right? They're just cranking out junk and sharing it with each other. I think we should be worried about that. But I also want to say they're doing that already, right? And this is going to give us access to information to try to steer them through sites like Brokers of Expertise and CPOMs to steer them to the things that we think are effective. But we don't have access to this information either. And so there's this component which is, we may not open the floodgates completely and just say, every teacher that's doing everything is going to connect to every other teacher who's doing everything, and it's just ollie in free, and we're out of it. Okay, so please.
So is the gatekeeper at the source as opposed to the Learning Registry? I kind of get the...
Gatekeeper is at the other side. Gatekeepers at the consumption. That's a really important design principle here. Gatekeepers, if you run Brokers of Expertise, you're the gatekeeper.
Right.
And no one can prevent information from coming to your doorstep, and no one can force you to take information beyond that doorstep. So if California has a particular magic sauce which says if 300 teachers says it's aligned to quality, or 2 states say it's aligned to quality, or we say it's aligned in some quality measure to a standard, it's in. So you could just come algorithms, or you could say anything that rises to this level goes over to CLearn for a full analysis to direct your resources efficiently, which is say don't look at everything, only look at things that are being used a lot, because those are the ones we should figure out if we need to get them in or out of the school. So every organization makes their own decisions. New York and Florida would have different decisions, different rules. But you can all be injecting back into the community, the commons as it were, to tell each other what's going on. What you do with that information is up to each individual organization. Does this get you closer? You may be skeptical, which I'd love to hear.
No, not necessarily. Okay. What I'm trying to get is to the end point.
The picture, yes.
I mean, I get the structure, it makes sense, and I'm trying to place the structure on the outside.